Guilt, shame, and remorse. As I dove deeper into my program, I felt a sense of belonging. I felt this sense of being home that I hadn't felt in my life since long before my social conditioning had begun. I sat among humans who were nothing like me. They did not look like me, they did not dress like me, they had very different life experiences than me. But there was one huge common denominator that made a soul connection within me. The way these people spoke about the pain inside of them resonated so deeply within me that I knew I had found my people. In all the counseling I had done throughout my life, I had never felt as seen and as understood as I did when I sat in those rooms. The more I began to resonate there, the more confusing my life outside seemed to become. At that time, I was dating a man I was wildly in love with. He was much older and emphatically into me. However, the more time I spent inside of the rooms, the more uncomfortable he became. I was beginning to change, and he could not stand the commitment I had made to my program. My schedule was no longer as flexible, my meetings became non-negotiable, and I was spending a lot more time with my sponsor. He was losing his grip on me, and his discomfort quickly shifted into insecurity and anger. This was the first of many signs that my life was changing. He became needier and would often show up at my apartment unannounced with flowers. He even tried to get me to skip my Sunday morning meeting to have brunch together. When I continued to prioritize my meetings over our time together, the gestures of his affection began to increase. One evening over dinner, as my lease was coming up for renewal, he asked me to move in with him. Completely caught off guard, I almost choked on my food. Flattered and distracted by the infatuation, I considered his proposal with enthusiasm. But when I drove home that night, no longer in his presence, I found this familiar knot of discomfort in my belly. It was sharp and almost nauseating. I didn't know what it meant or what to do with it, but I noticed that it only happened when we were apart. I questioned the pain. I wanted to know if this was my body showing me how much I missed him while we were away. I questioned if moving in together would eliminate this feeling. He worked in television production and had a very routine life and schedule. He was Mr. Responsible and Mr. Predictable, at least most of the time. One day, when we had planned to have a day date, he just didn't show up. He had been acting strangely for days, being short when we spoke on the phone and spending a lot of extra time at the gym. When I was finally able to get a hold of him that day, he sounded completely wasted. It was in the middle of the day, for God's sake, but then again, who was I to judge? His gym time was usually incredibly regimented, and the drinking in the middle of the day was very new behavior. He swore that he had overslept and went to the gym without even realizing we had plans for the day. He insisted that I come over and let him make it up to me. I knew that meant take me to dinner and an evening full of delicious sex. I hung up the phone, sat in my driveway, and fumed, then finally made my way to the valley. But I knew the sex would make all those feelings go away. He pulled me onto the couch when I arrived and started kissing me. He tasted so heavily of liquor that I couldn't even stand to be that close to his face. Every neurotransmitter in my brain began firing. Like a wave of psychosis overcame me in an instant. Pissed that he had lied to me about being at the gym when he had clearly been at the bar all morning, I told him to fuck off and left. I was out the door before he could even say a word. Pulling out of his neighborhood, my car drove me on autopilot back to the west side, straight to a bar I knew on Wilshire Boulevard. Before I realized where I was driving, I found myself sitting in the parking lot behind the bar. With every fiber of my being, I was ready to drink. I was so angry. I wasn't just angry at the fact that he stood me up, but more so at the fact that the taste of alcohol was so prevalent in his mouth as we made out that I spiraled into this psychosis of lunacy, ready to drive off the deep end into a bottle of tequila. It was the first time since I stopped drinking that the obsession had total and complete control of me again. Now what was I supposed to do with all these feelings? I thought to myself as I sat in the bar parking lot. I clearly wasn't going to get to fuck them away today like I'd planned. I so desperately wanted to cry, but nothing came out. The moments that followed are blurry. I was in a complete red zone. No ability to act, speak, or think. Just pure fury and rage. My car started and I drove home. To this day, I do not remember starting the car. I do not remember driving home. I do not recall any of those moments other than the fact that I ended up back at my house and not on a bar stool with a drink in my hand. By the time I had arrived home and sat on my bed, I had messages and messages from him raging about how much I'd changed, how my 12-step program was the devil's work, and I was guilty of drinking the Kool-Aid. It was at that moment, listening to all of his messages, that I had a deep knowing inside of me again. I broke up with him right then and there. I'd love to say that things got better from there, but that was not the case. My sponsor began having me work on my personal inventories. I was first tasked with looking at my resentments. That would be easy. I had lots of those. What I didn't yet understand about the personal transformation process was that our experiences with others are just mirrors. And the real work begins when we can look at ourselves honestly and see our part. As it would turn out, some years later, this is some of my favorite work to do with others in my transformation coaching business. Here's the thing about this work. We must be willing. We must be completely willing to go to any lengths to get to the root of how we operate. When I first sat down to begin this work, I was willing. I had plenty of resentments. I was able to get clear on what I was resentful about, why I was resentful, and how it was affecting my life. I dove all in, put pen to paper, worked, and then, one day, just didn't. I would say that I got busy, but that isn't even true. I got distracted. To take it a step further, I would say that I forced myself to find distractions. The guy I had just broken up with wouldn't take no for an answer. He was not willing to accept the breakup. He was challenging my boundaries. I didn't know how many other ways of "we're broken up" I could use to get him to leave me alone, but it was exhausting. At the same time, I took on some side work that I was able to do in my downtime while at the office. Being an expert accountability partner and creator of a mean color-coded spreadsheet, I began getting offers to help other people break away from their full-time gigs and become independent. I had been successful at restructuring and organizing other people's businesses so they could scale and grow in their zones of genius, and the word was getting around. Unbeknownst to me at the time, as I was collecting and organizing incoming media data, I was managing the sponsor deliverables for a motorsport racing series. The information didn't matter to me. I was just good at receiving, organizing, and redistributing, so I got paid to keep doing it. I did such a great job that in the spring I was offered an opportunity to join the gal I was working for at the first live event for the racing series. I said yes, and that's how I attended my first ever motorsports event just outside of Dallas, Texas. The first time I heard the trucks hit the track, I was in the trailer banging on keys. The sound of trucks roaring stimulated something inside of me that I had never felt before. My eyes must have been the size of my head because the other gals I was working for said, "Oh yeah, you've never been to something like this before." We stopped what we were doing and they dragged me out of the trailer. I pressed my face against the fence, mud bombs flying past my head, and the sound of adrenaline racing past my ears. I felt like a kid on Christmas morning. The giddiness was undeniable within my body. This was awesome. We didn't grow up off-roading like a lot of other families in Arizona. We spent all of our time traveling to Southern California for soccer tournaments. Fueled by dirt, fossil fuels, and adrenaline, I was hooked. After that weekend, I was offered an opportunity to work full-time as an event producer for the race series. I went back into the office the next week and gave my notice. I was going on the road. And just like that, my life got big and the importance of my inner work got small. That's like hitting a grand slam out of the park at the bottom of the ninth when your team needs one run to win and you stop at third base. You wouldn't stop at third base when your coach is telling you to run home and win it all. This is where I got in the work. I hit a home run and then plopped my happy ass on third base because something shiny